Good evening, everybody. This is Ishbu, former tank for HeroesHearth Esports, and I'm here to present to you my quick guide of how the Grandmasters do it for Sky Temple. Now, the goal of this series is to basically explain at a high level the meta for Grandmaster and other top level players on how they approach each of the various maps around the game. Now, with that said, disclaimer, Heroes of the Storm is a game that has a lot of diverse strategies, and as such, you might not see this stuff all the time, but typically when you're tuning into a stream or even just looking to implement high-level play into your own play, this should be a good guide to at least get you started on what these players are doing and why it's so effective. So, without further ado, let's move on. Now, Sky Temple is one of the fastest and most punishing maps in the entirety of Heroes of the Storm. It is a game where once you get behind, it is very hard to get back into the game. Structures specifically are your lifeline for this map. They are your health bar, especially because the objective attacks them directly. So any damage you can get on the enemy structures will add up. If you can take a wall before getting a temple, the temple will always get the fort or the keep or whatever you're aiming for. But just keep this in mind when making decisions on this map. So, on that regard, some do's and don'ts. Do prioritize heroes that threaten structures well, things that hit them well, things that can hit them safely. But do not look to pick late game scaling heroes like Nazeebo, Kael'thas, and Cho'Gall. This map can be decided very early, and even if it does go late, often you're not going to get those team fights you want, as this map can be won by just splitting and avoiding the enemy team once you're ahead. Now, do use mercenaries to pressure walls like we talked about early, but don't over-prioritize the boss. It is well known in the competitive community as the throw pit for a reason. It's one of the highest risk, low reward bosses in this game. So if you are ahead, don't risk it all by throwing to a boss. Alright, so a few heroes you'll see that fit the descriptions I just did. The first is the building punchers. Sylvanas, Greymane, Sergeant Hammer, and Anub'arak are great heroes at taking enemy structures. They either take them very fast or very safely, and Anub'arak, as you can see, he can put up beetles that allow you to tank turrets, which will allow you to pressure them a lot more safely with your DPS. So these are heroes you're going to be seeing a lot, or at the very least, you need to be aware of when drafting. Now, alternatively, there's also the global approach. This is a very big map with a lot of rotations, and being able to pressure multiple points of the map at once is super valuable. Finally, there's the split pushers. These are characters that independently just push a lane and create pressure just by existing. They will slowly push down structures if you don't answer them, and they can be extremely oppressive on this map. And finally, Abathur deserves his own category, specifically because he's the only hero in the game that still has Mule. Now, because building damage is so effective, Mule healing buildings can be game-breaking, which is why a lot of top-level players don't let Abathur play this map at all. You'll see him banned a lot on this map at high-level play. Alright, moving on to how the game starts off. Obviously, the most common arrangement is for everyone to come out the middle and fight over this watchtower, and that's completely fine, but after the watchtower fight settles, you're going to settle into a standard 1-4 arrangement. You're going to see offlaners top, and you're going to see the 4-mans rotating between bot and middle right here. You can usually catch both these and play it very similar to maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen or Dragonshire, where the 4-mans can catch all EXP. Now, moving on to 1 minute. 1 minute is when the camps spawn. You're going to see the bruisers spawn, and you're going to see the siege camp spawn. And because everyone's down here, you're perfectly in position to take siege right at the 1 minute mark. Often you'll see 2 people still holding the lanes just for EXP. Don't want to miss any soak. But you want to get this camp as fast as possible, specifically because if the enemy team takes theirs fast, they can then come over and pressure yours, and now you've got siege pushing bot while you're fighting around to defend your own siege. Also worth mentioning, laners like Dahaka can also dig down to help pressure this faster. Alright, once this initial phase is over, you're going to hit the 2 to 2:30 minute mark. Now the objective spawns at 3 minutes, so this is all preparation for the objective. The objective is obviously at the middle shrine and the top shrine are going to spawn and start shooting lasers. At about 2 to 2:30 is when most teams will flip their entire comp on their head. So offlaners are going to go to the bot and start double rotating between these, catching as much soak as they can. In the meantime, you're going to send 2 to 3 people to bruisers to take it quickly. You usually want your tank to try and fight over this eye right here, because its vision is going to be very important for the upcoming objective. And obviously don't miss soak where you can, so cover whatever soak you can, but the key here is you want to get bruisers. And the reason you want bruisers really badly in this is if you can get the bruisers pushing at exactly 3 minutes when the temples spawn, you've now got a giant wave piling up here, threatening the structure while this top temple is here. Now, if you can push with this top camp and get the enemy wall before taking the temple, you're going to guaranteed get this top fort, which is big because the temples normally only, on the first wave, get the wall and about half of the fort's health. Alright, so moving on. So the first temple, as I said, usually you're going to see teams fighting with their bruiser camps up top here, trying to get this. Whichever team is weaker usually is going to have to concede and get the middle temple instead. Now, after the first temple is done, you're going to see a flip back. You're going to see the offlaners go back to top lane, and the reason for this is the siege camps respawn, and so you're going to see an arrangement very similar to the beginning of the map with the 1-4 arrangement and with people taking their siege and trying to push them in to get whatever chip damage they can on the enemy's bot walls. Worth mentioning, this is a there's very few objectives on the map at this point, so it's a very free time for people to go top, gank that, or pressure whatever has been left over for the top lanes. So this is a very open part of the map, but typically you're just going to see the most of the play come around the siege giants. And finally, the second shrine. So the second shrine is probably the most important moment of the game in Sky Temple and ends up deciding a lot of games. Now, usually based on the timing of the first temple, the second temple will come right as both teams are trying to reach level 10. Whichever team can reach level 10 first can often win this bot team fight on the shrine, grab the shrine, or even boss, depending on how much they win the fight by. And it has the potential to just snowball out of control from there. So offlaners are going to be trying to catch whatever soak they can, usually in the top. You can send one of your DPS mid to go clear that wave really quickly. But the second you hit 10, you want your offlaner coming down, you want to collapse here. And honestly, if you're strong enough, if you're not 10 to 9 and the enemy offlaner is still up here, you can 5v4 dive them on this fort and just win the game outright from here. This is a really big team fight phase, and you're going to see a lot of focus because this is the big single shrine, as well as it's usually when teams hit about level 10. So after the second shrine, the game is pretty wide open. It depends very heavily on, what forts are down, what objectives are going to come up. Obviously, as you've seen, there's going to be a lot of going back and forth and taking camps directly on cooldown. But for the most part, it's pretty much a scramble to try and take out the other person's forts. But to go through a couple tips real quick, if you do manage to get ahead, either through the first or second shrine phase, your best bets to ending the game are 1, so only fight when you're ahead in talent tiers. So contest the enemy camps and make sure the enemy doesn't get any shrines when you're up a talent tier. So be aggressive when you're up the talent tier, but when you are even talent tiers, so 16 to 18, 13 to 15, whatever you might be, do you want to trade camps and objectives? There's so many camps and objectives on this map. You can have, with the double shrine spawns and with multiple camps spawning at once, you can very often trade camps and objectives and never fall behind. And you're going to go even in EXP gain, you're going to go even in structure damage, and then the second you hit the next talent tier, you can turn it back up again. Next, a really overlooked win condition on this map is getting both bruisers in the top lane around like the level 16 mark. If you can get your bruiser camp and then push all the way to the enemy side of the map and take their bruiser camp as well, that push wave can often take a keep by itself, and if you win a fight off of it, can even just win the game outright. So keep an eye on double bruisers, try to prevent your opponent from getting it, and if you're ahead, try to look to contest the enemy bruisers as much as you can to try and secure this win condition. And finally, we talked about at the beginning, the boss is the throw pit on this map. It is very high risk. Keep an eye on it, but don't start it unless you feel very safe, like you killed multiple of the enemy, or you're trying to bait a fight. Because this boss is in a very dangerous location to fight and will very often throw. Finally, if you are behind and need to try and get back in, you want to do the reverse of what I just talked about. So force fights whenever you have an even talent tier. Every even talent tier, go to the same objective as the enemy team, go to the same camp as the enemy team. Don't let them run you around, fight them. Also, normally the team that gets ahead initially is going to get all of the enemy's forts. You want to try and get the enemy's forts off the map as soon as possible. They're harder to defend the later the game goes on, so just take whatever safe moments you can. Obviously don't throw for them, but the sooner you can get the enemy's forts out of the way, the sooner you can start setting up a win condition. Speaking of win condition, the best win condition on this map when you're behind is going to be the bot shrine because of the boss. So prioritize bot shrines and the bot keep wall. If you can ever get the bot keep wall down, the boss now becomes an end condition for your team. And now finally, as I said, the big payoff for everything I've talked about before, any team fight or pick, you can look to start off the boss. Obviously, it is risky. I've talked about it a lot, but when you are the team that is behind, you have to take risks on this map. It is a very easy map to close out safely and without confrontation. So, if you ever get any advantage, start to look to use the boss to end and try to get as much damage as you can. Bot, it's a very easy way to win, even if you've been behind most of the game. So, the boss is your big comeback victory condition on this map, so always keep that in mind when playing. So, with that said, I think this is a pretty good place to stop. I don't want to overload y'all, but this has been a high-level quick guide on Sky Temple coming from you. Socials, if you want to just follow me or see any more of my stuff, you can follow me at Ishbu116 on Twitter, or Ishbu, those are zeros by the way, on Twitch. I don't stream too often, but if you do want to catch streams of high-level gameplay, I strongly suggest you check out Heroes Hearth. They're running the probably biggest competitive league for Heroes of the Storm right now, and it's got some high-level players from NA, Europe, and Korea all playing in it, or likely going to be playing in it. The draft hasn't happened yet, obviously, but it's a great resource for finding high-level gameplay and just supporting the scene in general, so I strongly suggest checking them out. Anyways, this has been Ishbu. I hope you all have a nice day wherever you are, and peace out.